Great to be here. So, as Lee said, I'm James Clark. I work for AMAG. My original background, I'm a systems engineer by kind of training, and found my way into the security industry. And what we're finding over recent times is that we feel like our industry is at an inflection point. I've actually blatantly quoted Leo Dess here as we talk about this, but ultimately we feel like the next 30 years in the security industry has very little to do with the last 30 years. Ultimately, as manufacturers, as integrators, as end users, the market is changing beyond all recognition, and the ones that want to do what they've done for the last 30 years, I think are going to wither on the vine, would be my view. Ultimately, in order to be able to kind of reap the benefits of those changes, we have to change our mindset. And as we kind of think about the world we live in, I think we have to stop thinking about ourselves as security integrators and limiting ourselves to that kind of mindset, and start thinking about the world of systems integrators. Ultimately, everything we do is fundamentally is a system. So, for those of you who don't know what a system is, this is the definition of a system. As I said, I'm a systems engineer, but ultimately a system is a set of related components and resources, importantly. So human beings are part of a system, okay, that ultimately work together in a particular environment in order to perform whatever function is required to achieve the system's objective. Now, ultimately, the definition of defining the system's objective is driven through collaboration, is driven through conversation, is driven through the ability to reach out and work with partners across the value chain in order to be able to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. Now, when I think about systems thinking, I think about some of these tools. Now, if you're an expert in the world of systems theory, this really is scratching the surface, right? Like, this isn't going into the finite detail of systems theory, but when you look at it, I think these are some of the most powerful tools that I would consider using. We talk about the concept of disconnection to interconnectedness, okay? So a systems engineer would look at these disparate points that exist, these disparate requirements, and is looking to drive interconnectedness, okay? The interesting thing about it, though, is when you drive that interconnection, you're driving complexity into the solution, okay? Because ultimately, and this is often why I think security integrators leave these things somehow separate, because it makes it so much simpler, right? As soon as you create the interconnections between those points, you create complexity. And ultimately, when you create complexity, it makes it much more difficult for you to deliver the solution, okay? Guess what? In order to fix that complexity, you have to drive collaboration. So this is when you get into the world of actually not wanting to ultimately have people who take this linear path. Like, as we exist as in the security industry today, how often do we go consultant to end user to integrator to manufacturer in that line? Ultimately, people are fighting to own the end user relationship. Okay, we have to throw away that rule book. We have to get to a world where it moves from the linear environment into a circular environment. And by the way, the circular thing never stops, okay? And actually, it's full of people collaborating, not wanting to own that end user relationship, and fundamentally going, okay, what's the requirement today? Okay, the requirement today based on this workflow is this, okay? Oh, but in maybe a month's time or a week's time, that's changed, the requirement's changed. How do we then get everyone in that world thinking about this circular cycle of a systems thinker that means that you literally never stop understanding the requirement? It's got to be the way to go, right? I think ultimately those people who take this linear path, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle. We still find integrators today who prevent us as manufacturers talking to end users because they have to own it. It's a sense of distrust, right? But ultimately, if you can find integrators and manufacturers who will partner with end users and not be precious about it, it's an English expression for those of you who aren't English, then ultimately that's where success lies, right? Silos, it's the same principle, you know. Systems theory talks about the transition from the silos to the world of emergence. You take these things and ultimately you take them out of the silo and you bring them together. Unfortunately, guess what? That's complexity right there. Like, it even looks like complexity. Everyone wants a silo. It's simple. I understand where I'm playing and I understand how I'm playing. Put them in this thing. It's a petri dish. It's like, it's creating the environment where you bring these things together and you create this emergence of something really powerful. But it's hard. And it takes collaboration, it takes partnership, and it takes trust. The parts and the wholes, it's obvious. A systems engineer is trying to take the individual parts of the system and bring them into one greater system. I mean, we talk about the concept of synthesis, but synthesis is about taking two separate things and making something new. Okay? That's what synthesis is, and ultimately that's what a system engineer is trying to achieve. And this isolation and relationships, again, everything in a systems engineer's mind is complex, but ultimately it's the complexity that is solved by human relationships. Okay, it's the only way you're going to do it. If you try and drive any of this kind of approach, then you're going to fail. The reason we do it as security integrators like we do it today, like this, the linear, not the circular, is because we're trying to remove complexity. We think we're doing people a favor, but ultimately what it means is the end user never gets what they actually want. Okay? So, we really need to, I mean, I've touched on some of these things as we've gone here, but we really need to change our mindset away from the linear and to the circular. The important thing about the circular is you never step off it. I'm a sales leader, and I have the sales cycle that you follow that starts at the RFP and goes all the way down. Like, I would ask people sometimes when I train them to sell, like, when do you ever come off this thing? Well, when you get told you didn't get the job. No. That's the time you definitely stay on it, because that's when you understand the future requirement. That's when you understand what's changed in that period of time. Literally, you never come off it. And we have to think in this way. And as manufacturers, we certainly have to think in this way. You know, the concept of voice of customer, sure, it's so important, but you only get it by doing this and being brave enough to go through the tough times on the circular cycle. Everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected. Like, in terms of what we're trying to do, anyone in this building here, in terms of servicing the needs of an end user, everything is interconnected. And you have to embrace that interconnectivity, but recognize the complexity that it brings is only solved through collaboration. Okay? The collaboration and partnership is something that you see sporadically. I genuinely believe the most successful manufacturers and integrators in 5 years' time will be the ones that put their own needs to one side and truly partner. And truly partner in an unselfish way, in a way that's ultimately about learning what does the next good thing look like, okay? And it does, it's true. I've done systems engineering for 30 years, right? The relationships solve the complexity problem. It's the only thing that solves the complexity problem, right? And actually, as you drive these things into place, what you do is you generate huge operational efficiency into buildings. So in a strange way, you create complexity, then through partnership, you solve complexity in end users' environments, okay? Synthesis is, as I said before, it's the ability to combine two things to create something new, okay? It's effectively the dissection of complexity into manageable components. So you take these separate items which create complexity, you basically through synthesis bring them together and you make something new, but it basically solves a complexity problem for you. Ultimately, let's put that in an end user environment, let's put that in a security environment, and what you're doing is driving operational efficiency, okay? You're driving task automation, because what you're doing is these four people who do these four separate things like this, you synthesize them and bring them together, you create something new, but it's task automation, it's improving operational efficiency, it's saving money for an organization through the work you do in that way. In order to do synthesis, though, you have to be able to see beyond what's right in front of your face. You have to be able, as a manufacturer, to not come in and go, oh, I recognize your business. We've done this like 100 times before. You need this, 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 and this. No, you don't do that. Never talk about the product. You come in and talk about the problems you're trying to solve, understand those individual components, and then you bring them together as a workflow and go, okay, this is what your business could look like. This is how we improve the operational efficiency. Okay, now let's talk about some of the things we can deliver, either as an integrator through service or as a manufacturer through products and indeed through service. Okay, so ultimately that's what it's doing. And I believe this, larger things come from smaller parts, right? But it's how you put them together and whether you're brave enough to put them together. Okay? So ultimately, I think our future success is predicated on the existence of collaboration and partnership across the value chain. I strongly believe, as Lee said, the next 30 years have got nothing to do with the last 30 years. And actually the next 30 months have got nothing to do with the last 30 months. This thing is evolving faster than we can ever possibly understand. The end users, the consultants, the integrators, the manufacturers who are able to understand the concept of partnership and collaboration in its truest form are the ones that will succeed. This one here, I mean, I've worked in an integrator space. You're precious about your end users. You're frightened that someone's going to take them away from you. But actually, ultimately, end users want an integrator who is open to being able to show the possibility, the art of the possible. And we have to basically remove that desire to own the end user and own that relationship. But it works the other way as well. You have to have integrators who are comfortable not to own the relationship with the manufacturer. It has to be kind of symbiotic in the way it works. The emergence of systems thinking and that ability to move from the traditional security integrator to systems integrator is at the heart of all of it. I've shown you a few systems thinking models that work. There are so many more of them. But ultimately, that ability to move from linear to the circular model, the ability to drive interconnectivity across things, but recognizing the complexity that you create is solved through human relationship and through collaboration is absolutely fundamental and really will define what the industry looks like, in my opinion, for the next 30 years. Thank you very much.